Global Broadcasting Networks presents Coach Talk Radio. Create the time, money, and lifestyle you want with tips, tricks, and techniques that get you started today from some of the best internet minds in the business. Now here are your hosts, internet brand strategist Sandra Beck.
Hey guys and dolls, this is Sandra Beck, and I was recently on Second Wind with Joyce Buford talking about divorce. I'd like to share that episode with you this week.
I hope your day is starting off with a boom, an exciting boom, because this is going to be a show full of valuable information. You're going to love being here and listening to my guests today. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Sandra Beck, who is my guest. She is empowerment, and this is goes throughout her lifeline and her work. Whether she is coaching a company owner to $1 million commission goal, training a stay-at-home mom to perform SEOs on websites, or speaking to a group of women who are in recovery, her message is always what is possible and how to create the circumstances of your choosing. In time when technology has the ability to transcend physical limitations, Sandra Beck teaches all of her clients how to maximize their lives of using their dreams. Sandra Beck is the president of Beck Multimedia. As an author, coach, speaker, radio host, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, Sandra Beck is as successful as she is busy. And she's a busy woman because she's a single mom. And she has created a virtual empire of successful companies, entirely staffed, managed, and implemented using a host of virtual assistants and online resources. Author of Motherhood Incorporated, The Smart Woman's Guide to Working from Home with Just a Computer and an Internet Connection, and Blogforia, How to Reach Millions of People Without Spending a Dime. Sandra Beck is a powerful voice in the social media arena as a popular internet brand strategist. Sandra is the host of five radio shows: Military Mom Talk Radio, Powered Up Talk Radio, Dynamic Women, Coach Talk Radio, and Powered Up Talk Radio. That's awesome, Sandra. Sandra, awesome. And I've even been on one or two of those, and it's been fun.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. But Sandra Beck was born in a small town outside of Buffalo, New York. She attended Northwestern University and earned both her bachelor's degree in journalism and her master's degree in advertising. She's the owner and operator of Motherhood Incorporated. Wow, Sandra, how do you do it?
I'm just tired listening to that. I'm like, no wonder I'm so tired every day.
I know, but how you have built this career, this life, is just awesome. I mean, I kind of step back and in awe of you. But today, the subject that Sandra and I are going to be visiting about is one that we both have transitioned through. And so I think there are many out there in the listening audience that will have interest in knowing our subject for the day, which is becoming your best self after divorce. That's a major transition that, needless to say, it reels us. It throws us off balance. It's painful getting there. It's painful going through it. And it's certainly painful putting ourselves back together. So I'm delighted to be talking about the subject with you, Sandra, because I know you're going to give us some great input in just to the recovery side of that transition. I always like to ask my guests, because I remember so clearly the day that it was like that aha moment where you went, something's changing, in your life. And so it's very fresh in your mind. Do you mind sharing your life-changing aha moment with us?
Oh, there were, I was kind of like the aha had to get hit on the head with the hammer ahas. Because I had a lot of clues that my marriage wasn't working, but I had this Pollyanna aspect to myself, and I really believed, if I just loved this person enough, if I just worked as hard as I could, like I could, save this. And I remember reading when I was a little girl, my mom's ladies' home journal, like, can this marriage be saved? And I would always think, because I was also an avid reader of Harlequin romance as a young lady. You just had to love, Joyce. You just had to love enough. And, when my ex-husband didn't stop dating, you just have to love, and through a series of disasters, you just have to love. And and then he left. So, then at that point, the aha moment was, wow, I guess you don't have to just love. I guess there's more to it than that. So I wish I could say there was like one defining aha moment, but there were so many, Joyce, that just flew over my head like a 747. And I'm a smart girl, but they do say love is blind, and boy, they're right.
Well, I hung in there, if you don't mind me sharing a couple of mine. Sure. I hung in there, and I kept saying every year, it'll get better next year.
Yes.
Did you ever say that one?
Oh, yes, for 10 years.
Yes, it's going to be better next year.
Yeah.
Next year.
Or it'll get better when he gets a job. It'll get better when he does. And it was all him, because the one thing I'll say, Joyce, is as miserable I was in my marriage, I was happy everywhere else. I loved my job. I had a great circle of friends. I did a lot of charity work, and I have a wonderful family. So, and there was part of me that said, well, you can't have it all. So, if I had this amazing, wonderful husband that loved me like I loved him, I mean, it would be pretty close to perfect.
I know. That is, it kind of does set you off. You develop, outside things really go well for you. And
yes.
It's when you come home that they just kind of don't work so well. They stink, actually. And so there's lots of stress and frustration there.
Yeah, but person out in public, and I'd come home and feel like the biggest loser.
Yeah, right. Well, I always say I'm convinced that we are so programmed as little girls to believe that we, of course, are Cinderella, and that when we meet our prince, life is just going to be great.
That's right.
We're going to go live in the castle, and everything is going to be wonderful because we've ran away from our wicked mother or whatever, whoever that person is that we think is the wicked person. And it's just unbelievable. And that Walt Disney story has programmed so many little girls over the world.
Well, and it's like the end result, like when they it's just like, oh, you get married happily ever after. Like getting married is when the story begins. Like it's not the end of the story, but I just believed, okay, once you get married, you get married. And Joyce, to take it one step further, and I know this sounds crazy given who I am today, but I really didn't think I had a choice in husbands. And I don't know where I got this. I just thought you were chosen. Like the prince comes to get the princess. Like, I didn't really think about who I want to be with, what I wanted in my life. And I was blessed to have amazing brothers and an amazing dad. So I thought every man was wonderful. But it never occurred to me someone would hurt me. It never occurred to me someone could be selfish. And I look at my childhood, and this is probably where the Pollyanna thing came from. And my ex-husband used to call me, not in a nice way. He's like, you're such a Pollyanna. You just think everything's going to go your way. You just think everything's wonderful. You think everyone's nice. Well, why wouldn't I? I had a great mom and dad. I had great brothers and sisters, a big fat and happy Polish German family, all, living close to each other. And I'd see all my relatives, and, we had our squabbles and stuff, but I was surrounded by love. So why would you, and I get this great scholarship to Northwestern, and the business school happens to be my advisor. I get great direction. I would have taken art and dance. He's like, no, you got to go to business school. I'm like, okay. Why would I think any different?
Right.
Because we shelter our daughters.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, those early signs, sometimes I saw signs, but I really didn't pay any attention to them.
Yeah, me too. When you look back.
There's that Pollyanna. I just thought, well, it'll work itself out. It'll work itself out. Once he knows how wonderful I am, it'll be working itself out.
Right.
So it didn't. And so when you decided, you talk about a situation that was a eye-opening situation for you, or an experience where you saw your reflection.
Joyce, I felt like such a fool, and I wanted to die of embarrassment and shame. When my ex-husband moved out, he moved out on my birthday during the birthday party, got his stuff and left in front of my parents and in front of my kids. And, and he moved in with a woman who worked with us, and they're now married, and we live in a very small town where everybody knows everybody. And I know it sounds silly, but it was wave after wave of humiliation. And I took it all personally. Like now when I look back, I go, okay, well, most of this had really nothing to do with me. It had to do with, his issues, her issues, or whatever. But, being the good little girl, I took them all on my shoulders. And I felt like such an abject failure. I was humiliated every day, and I didn't want to leave my house. I was so ashamed. And all of that was me. I put all that on me. Nobody came over and said, you're a failure. Nobody pointed their finger at me. And some people pointed and said it was all my fault, but
we're not acknowledging those people.
But I took it all on, Joyce, and I took it on. And, I had some compounding things at the time. I went through a foreclosure because of it. I had a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old, and my mom was dying of breast cancer all at the same time. So I didn't know which way was up. And I went into the turtle. I would go in my little home office, and I wouldn't come out unless I needed to get my kids or do something. And, I just collapsed. I still worked because I had bills to pay. I'm sole supporting, and I never got child support or spousal support. So I had to make a living for us. And, I cried a lot, Joyce. I cried every day. I cried every day, sometimes for hours. I couldn't stop.
Yeah. I was visiting with somebody about the divorce, and it's, for me, I think making that transition from a married woman to a divorced woman was really difficult, because I had never thought of that being a choice I would make.
Right.
And when I had to make that choice for me, it was just unbelievable. And it threw me into total depression. Yeah. And it sounds like you were there too.
Well, and the first time I went to file, I was pregnant with my little one, and my older one was like 2. And I remember my little guy threw Cheerios all over this fancy law office, and, he had a sticky juice box, and I was just sitting there, and then they called my name. I just sat there like a zombie. And I went into the attorney, and the first thing he said to me is, he goes, well, why'd you marry the guy in the first place? And I was so wrong, Joyce. I felt like I got beat up. So I just got up and left. I didn't even finish because my ex-husband was supposed to pick up the kids that day. That didn't happen I don't even remember for what reason, or I guess he was picking up my other one, because the other one was still in my tummy. But I couldn't even answer, and I was just so humiliated. So I got up and I pushed the stroller out, and I just left. I never went back to the attorney. I never returned the call. I just left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I didn't file again until like almost a year later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because he put you in such shock? Or do you feel that was the reason? Or
I don't think I was ready.
okay.
I was emotional and I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. There was another woman in the marriage at this point, and I've got this baby in my belly. I've got another little boy, who's 2, and I was a mess. And you should not file for divorce when you're a mess. And so what I did though was I got myself in order. I actually hired a divorce coach and a therapist. To kind of walk me through the emotions. And, when you're pregnant, you're emotional anyway. And so she's like, wait until, after the baby's born. And then after the baby's born, wait a couple months, see how you feel, see what's going on, and then, I did pull the plug. I did file. And the day I filed, Joyce, I got up with such clarity. There was no emotion. There was no crying. I knew what I needed to do. I knew I needed to create a different life for the kids and for myself. And I was at peace that time. But the first time I was just I wasn't even a hot mess. I was just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, that transition period is just so fuzzy. It's like you don't know what you want. You want up, you want down, you want to lay on the sofa and just cry.
I just wanted it to stop hurting.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I didn't want to, it's like a death when you wake up in the morning and there's that little bit of like you wake up and you're like, oh, it's a new day.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So in your transition or going through your, I'm going to call it divorce recovery.
Yeah.
Recovery, because that really is what we're about after the papers are final and we walk out of the building and then we go, okay, what's next? So how did you find that? Where did you start in one area? How did you start? Because you said you had the responsibility of your children, which immediately threw you into produce.
Well, and the nice thing is I was always the breadwinner. I was always the primary breadwinner. So, I was grateful. And I'll tell you, boy, if you got to get a divorce, own a company of women, because corporate is a bunch of women. I have to tell you, Joyce, one of the biggest things was all the women around me. I needed a new website. So 2 of the girls up in Canada, Kim and Wendy at the time, built me a website for a gift to me. They were both web designers. They're like, Sam, look what we did for you. And if I needed to cry, I had like 40 women that would listen to me. And not that I didn't want to be that kind of boss or that kind of owner, but everybody kept telling me I could do it. I couldn't swing a dead cat around my life without somebody saying, you're going to be fine. You can do this. Now, I didn't believe it. I bet you I heard it 1,000 times. I didn't believe it. But I had amazing women friends. I had my friend Lisa Dietrich. She would come over every night, not every night, but every like Monday night, and she'd pray with me because, my mom was so sick and I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know where to turn.
Oh, that's so difficult.
She would pray. We would sit at my kitchen table, Joyce, 2 cups of tea. And, her mother also died of breast cancer. So she was very knowledgeable of the process. Mm-hmm. And so I would cry through the whole prayer session and she would just pray. And I remember her saying, God, please comfort Sandra. Please let her know how much she is loved. Like that was so huge for me. And then I had a great therapist who only charged me the copayment for my insurance. She didn't take insurance and she was a divorce expert. And, she would just say, you're normal. Like these are normal feelings. Let's talk about these feelings. Because you do feel kind of like a whack job. You feel like you've lost your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I lost my identity. Joyce, did that happen to you? Like I was a married woman with 2 kids and now I was a single woman and I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that for many years. Now I'm okay with it, but it took me years to even say the word divorce. I used to say recycle.
I know.
I'm recycled.
Recycle.
Yeah, because I felt like I'm coming out of something and I'm not the old thing anymore. I'm recycled into something new and usable.
Yeah. Well, I still have this conversation. I resent on medical forms where they ask if you're married, divorced, or and they sometimes have single on there, and I'll check
Yeah.
single just to be
Or
honest.
other. I like other.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know why they have to know that. And I was
Because it's
visiting
the
with.
dumbest things.
I know. And I was visiting with a friend who just lost her husband. And we were talking about this Sunday. And she said, I feel the same way about widow. And I
Yeah.
said, really? Because it's like widow has more grace than divorce. I don't know why.
Yes, but because divorce conveys failure. A widow, you can't do anything. A widow is like, oh, but that's the other thing, Joyce. Like when my ex-husband moved out, for a while, he was just enjoying himself and not really seeing the kids too much. And I kept giggling because I kept thinking, well, I lost my husband because I don't really know where he is. We weren't divorced at this time. And I said that once, and people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry he's died. And I'm like, no, I just don't know where he is. Because these labels are they have so much, they carry so much emotion and so much meaning. That's why I don't like them.
Yeah. I have one similar to that. I was at a new church. And so I was visiting with the minister, and I went into my whole history about I'm the ex-wife of my husband. It was so weird the way I said it. I still, to this day, it's bright as it could be. And I went in, and this guy really didn't want to know all that. He wanted to know who I was, But that goes back to lose your identity, because that is part of your identity. And so that was so weird. Yes, I totally lost it there for a while.
Yes.
I recovered. Yeah. So.
Because you're just trying to figure it out, and you have to tell the story, and this is why I was so glad with my therapist and my friends to pray with, and they all told me the same thing, and it's true. You have to tell the story until you don't want to tell it anymore. And I remember talking to my friend's husband Tom, who was fixing my air conditioner, and I'm like, God, I'm so sick of this story. I don't even want to tell it anymore. I'm done with that part of my life. And I was done.
Right. Yeah. But did you ever fall into the story where you wanted people to know he had done you wrong?
Well, that's where I was very lucky. My ex-husband was a public figure, an entertainer, and he and the girlfriend were very public at soccer, at the local restaurants. Everybody in town knew he was with someone else, not me. I'm just walking around, with a pregnant belly and a little baby, and nobody wanted to tell me, who's going to tell the pregnant wife that?
Yeah. Right.
Because women would avoid me. And that was the funny thing, Joyce. Like I thought everybody hated me. And then finally I filed for divorce, and I started showing up at some places, and people would say, oh my gosh, we didn't know what to do. Yeah. And so I got a different perspective of the other people, because they're like, look, you're pregnant. Maybe you didn't know. And I'm like, well, I didn't know for a long time, but maybe it's none of our business. Maybe it was just going to burn itself out. Sometimes guys have affairs when their wives are pregnant, and it blows up, and the family's fine. Like, nobody wanted to be the one to come over and tell me. Yeah. And I heard that from like a bunch of the preschool and the kindergarten moms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't. It's in many ways, divorce is like similar to death. It's people don't know what to do.
It is death.
They don't know how to support us. They don't know what to ask
or to say.
Yeah. So, and you're so right. It's the death of a marriage. And
this is death of life together. It's like, a relationship takes on a life of its own. You're a family, you're a unit. And when that breaks up, you have to grieve it like a death, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Especially if it was important to you. Marriage and family is everything to me. Like, that it's more important than, it's like, my faith is first, my family is second. Like, so if you're like that and you lose that, you lose one of the most precious earthly possessions you can have, your family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I so agree. Yeah. And still, even I would say, and I'm almost like 20 years after my divorce, there are still some times that it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm really kind of sad about that.
Sure. Me too. I'm year 8. Yeah. And there's times I do feel sad. And, I feel sad, Joyce, when the kids and I get in the car, we're 3. So there's always somebody that has to sit alone. There's never mom and dad and the 2 kids in the back. And that always makes me sad, even still.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Well, we've talked about the transition and the sadness, which we could go on talking about that. But after we come back,
I'd like to say we honored it.
We honored it. That's very well said, Sandra. And so anyway, when we come back from our break, we're going to talk about how you started taking care of yourself and how you were managing to get through some of the sadder times, particularly with the children, and how you moved into a healthier, happier place in your life, because we have to return to the joy of living. We have to return there because life has really not ended. It's transitioned. It's changed in some way. So when we come back, I really want us to spend time talking about putting the pieces back together so that our lives are fulfilled and full and happy. And we can change lives today by sharing those things. So when we come back, Sandra will be sharing how she transitioned her life and how it graduated through the follow-up process year after and so forth. So when we come back, we'll be talking more about divorce and recovery. Recovery for sure. So don't go away. We'll be back shortly.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Gerasi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Gerasi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
I was reading an article that said 16% of employers have fired employees for calling in sick with taradiddles and fake excuses. Career Builder's annual study reveals some of the most outrageous excuses workers have given when calling in sick. One employer called in because he thought he had won the lottery. Another employee said the chemicals in his turkey sandwich made him fall asleep, so he missed his shift. Now there's a fimble-famble or a poor excuse if I ever heard one. One person said a swarm of bees kept him from getting into his car, and another called in sick because they couldn't decide what to wear. Then again, some excuses are a little more inventive, like the cat had synchronous diaphragmatic flutter, or singletus, otherwise known as the hiccups. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my new app, Too Funny for Words.
Take
Welcome back. Sandra and I were busy a little bit over the break there, and we were laughing because, all of us think that the pain that we go is our pain. It's like I was the one that suffered that. And that there are so many similar situations in every situation. It's like we all roll up in the ball. We all get embarrassed. We all lose our identity. Those are some of the common things that happen in just the process of moving through divorce. So now we're going to spend time, and Sandra's going to share with us how she began taking care of the different parts of like the body, the mind, the spirit, to help her move through into wholeness again. So Sandra, how did you start your recovery?
Well, it was in fits and spurts. It wasn't smooth, even though it will sound like it was smooth. One of the things that I did that my therapist had me do was these morning pages, and you just buy a spiral bound notebook like the kids use for high school and college, and I had to sit down before my kids got up, and that was sometimes like 2 a.m. when you have a baby, but yeah. I committed every day to writing 3 pages. And it's so funny, Joyce, because I burned them. I burned these books because I didn't want anybody to read the awful, horrible things I wrote. But and you have to take a pen and paper. It's not as satisfying on the computer, and there's a whole bunch of neurological reasons why. But I sat down and I would write, and sometimes I'd write, I'm mad, I'm hurt, he's such a jerk, just all this ugly stuff. And then it'd be like, I'm so sad, I'm such a loser. Like, oh, because we have all these silly, crazy emotional thoughts in our head. And I just would sit down and write whatever came to mind. Sometimes it would be like, oh God, there's like the carpet's so disgusting. I need to get it cleaned. And should I get the carpet cleaned? Or, the baby needs the shots. And, it was just a place to put that stuff. And I found it in the morning. And I know Julia Cameron wrote a lot of books about and guides about doing morning pages, but the morning pages helped me. And I could see the evolution of going from anger, frustration to hope, and then to planning. And I want everybody to know it's entirely okay after divorce to look to the future and see nothing. Zippo. And especially for somebody like me that was a big planner, that was really scary for me because I felt I had no future, and I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I preferred because I didn't know who I was anymore. And it was like, I like to use this analogy because I have boys, and my boys always had Legos. And you know how they make Legos, like they'll make some Lego design and then kick it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, tear it up.
Right, and the Legos go all over the carpet. Well, that's kind of what it feels like when you get a divorce. You've got this whole little building made, and then either you or actions or behaviors or your spouse comes in and kicks it. And all the pieces fall down. But the most important thing, Joyce, is the pieces are still there. They're not gone forever, but it feels like it. And you have an opportunity now to build something new out of the Legos. And that analogy I held on. I still hold on to it today, because when I try something and I don't know if it's going to work, I'm like, you know what? I can rebuild it. And rebuilding is so much a process of the post-divorce recovery. And, having something to hold on to. And this was the other thing that I held on to, and I still hold on to it 8 years later. My little guy and I were watching the Lego Ninjago movie. It's a Lego movie, with little characters, and these guys were all ninjas. And the wise sage grandfather, or Sensei Wu, comes on the TV, like 2 a.m, Joyce. I'm feeding one baby, my little 3-4-year-old's watching this video. And he comes out and he looks at the television and he says, "Do only what you can do today to get you to where you want to be." And it was like, granted it's 2 a.m. with the 2 kids. It was like he was coming out of the television saying, "Sandra, just do what you can do today to get you to where you want to be." And, that resonated. That little line from a kid's show touched me so deeply that I speak on that. I live by that principle. And I started sitting down each morning after I would do my morning pages.
Yeah.
And take 5 minutes and write out what I needed to do today. Not everything that needed to be done, because that's when I would go into crazy psycho overwhelm.
Yes.
Just what did I need to do today? Okay, today I need to do the laundry because the kids are out of whatever. I need to go to the grocery store because we have this. I need to return these client calls. I need to edit this document. And that's it. I try to put more on my plate. I didn't try to fix everything. And I put into my day routine, and this is where, like, you know, gyms have childcare that are just, you can go in the shower and cry while your kids are being in the childcare. You can go work out. When I first...
You would go there to cry. Others would go there to work out.
Yes. And everybody told me to take yoga. And you know what, Joyce? It was horrendous because I got in there and they started playing this music and I'd get weepy. And, you know, when your husband leaves you for someone else, your self-esteem takes a turn, like at least mine did, like totally in the toilet. And then I looked at all these women who were skinnier than me and more flexible than me. And then I fell over in my first class and the teacher's like, "Is this your first time?" And I'm like... You know, done. So I walked across the street to the Krav Maga place, which is martial arts. And I was out of shape, Joyce. I had just had a baby a couple months ago. You know, I wasn't exactly peak physical condition. I was 35, 36. It's not like I was 20-something. But I went in there and the guy said, "Come on and take a class." And I took the class and it was like throwing a temper tantrum. I was kicking things. I was punching things. And then you have to yell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my toddler does this and I go do it. And I did it for a year. And one time the guy, Frankie, worked with me and he said, "Sand," he goes, "you got a lot of anger." I'm like, "You think?" And he said, "I want you to meet me after class." And he took this big bag, Joyce, and he gave me these big funny gloves. I looked ridiculous. I looked like a cartoon character. And he's like, "Punch." And he's like, "Who are you mad at?" And I told him, and, you know, not to give up lots of details, but he's like, "Okay, punch him in the head, punch him in the head, punch her in the head, punch her in the head, you know, punch this person in the head, punch your company in the head, punch your foreclosure in the head, punch your dead mom in the head." And it, you know, it helped me get rid of, and that was a big emotional passing for me. I had to get all that energy out, and yoga didn't work for me. I needed something where I could yell, scream, and cry, and basically throw a controlled tantrum.
Oh, yeah. That was great. Didn't you feel wonderful after your hour in there?
Oh, I went for 3 years, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I would save it up. And Dawn Schneider, my sparring partner, I love her. She's 6 feet tall in her stocking feet, so I could kick as hard as I wanted to. I didn't have to hold back.
Oh, that's what you actually do in that
You kick
class.
and you punch and you yell. You go, "Ha! Punch! Ha! Punch!" And I'm telling you, it feels good. It gets a lot of that deep down. Like if you're like me, a swallower, like a swallow of anger, you know, you try to keep the peace. And, you know, I don't like to fight, which is very funny. I'm not somebody I'm not combative. In fact, I shy away from conflict. But once he unleashed the dragon in that class, I probably had, 40 years of anger coming out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you were raised in a family that was loving and all this. So I don't dare say you had very many opportunities really be angry.
No, and it wasn't, I'm from the Upper East Coast. I'm from a Christian family. So none of those encourage girls to yell and scream.
Right.
No judgment, good, bad, or indifferent. It's just, that's just not ladylike.
Right. Yeah. Yes, for sure. I have heard of some therapists. I have a friend that went through her divorce, and she would go down and break plates or bottles.
Oh.
And to get through her anger. And so any way you can express yourself and letting that, the more vigor or you can express it more openly, I think it is a great release for that anger that we carry.
Well, and the good thing about martial arts, at whatever level you take it, Joyce, you also get the fitness benefit at the same time. Like for me, with 2 kids and soul supporting, I had to multitask. So it would be great to go out and break things, but I also needed to get myself to the gym. I needed to get my fitness back. And that kind of did like 3 things. It allowed me to really work up a sweat. It allowed me to get stronger, like my muscles got stronger. And when you feel strong, it kind of translates over to your emotional strength. And it also allowed me to release a lot of that anger and frustration and sadness. And then, Joyce, the funny thing was, one day I went in there and I'm like, I don't need this anymore. And I went to yoga.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, because then I was ready to be calm with my feelings. And, and it took about 3 years, I'll be honest. It wasn't a slow process, but I had changed. And so my workout changed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important point there, is that we need the exercise that really, really fits the time.
Right, where we are.
Yeah. You need to express yourself. You need to let that anger out. Then a more combative. That's really good. Yeah. I like that.
So I transitioned, and it's funny because I did yoga and meditation, and and I still do it, but not as much. I don't take an hour and a half class. Now I do like little 15-minute yoga bursts on Daily Burn, and my workouts now, 8 years later, are variety based. I might punch the heavy bag. I might be on the treadmill or the elliptical, and then I might go over and swim. And I think it's really hard to stay depressed when you work out once a day.
Yeah.
Hard to get there. That's the hardest thing. I mean, it's hard to get there even when you're not depressed.
Yes. Yeah.
But
now, do you also do a walking program? Because you live in the country.
I do. I walk a lot when I can, but I do like to walk. And I do, because I work a lot, Joyce, and I have a lot of overhead. I live in Southern California, so it's expensive. I do walking meetings. And I always tell my clients or my friends or my family, if I have to call them back, like, I don't sit and talk on the phone. I get up and I walk while I'm on the phone. So I'll walk around my pool. I'll walk around my neighborhood. I'll walk around the park, and I'll take my calls with me. And I just say right up front, look, I'm going to be walking during our call today. You're going to hear some heavy breathing. It's nothing other than me exercising. And most people know my story. So they're okay with that. And if I have a meeting that has to be on the computer or I have to take notes, then I can't do my walking meeting. But I'll tell you, if you carry a little pad and paper and you're like, I carry a little backpack when I walk, and you need to sit down and write something down at the meeting, you can do that. And it keeps me from feeling trapped in my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, all of those exercises that you did, really, you address taking care of the body, the mind, the spirit, and the soul. But were there other areas that you participated in to help those areas?
Yeah, I listened to like Joyce Meyer, Joel Osteen. I actually shut off my television because I was tired of seeing affairs be glorified and the excitement of the affair, and because I'm the one on the other end,
Right.
And a lot of TV shows, a lot of television shows feature that as something exciting and different and dangerous. Well, when you're going through it, it just sucks. So I shut off the TV and I replaced all that time. I would only watch a comedy. Like I would watch like The Big Bang Theory or reruns of Frasier or something like that. I would only feed my brain with that. And I only fed my brain with inspiring literature or I got Sirius Radio and listened to Joel Osteen and Joyce Meyer and Wayne Dyer. Like, I purposely chose things that would uplift me, and I tried to steer away from anything that was negative or people who were negative, Joyce, because I was like walking around made of like shattered crystal that was like put together by Scotch tape. And if you had tapped me on the shoulder, I would break into a million pieces. I was that fragile. So I had to control my mental environment. And then I also needed to feed my spirit and my soul. So those helped me. I would go to church, but I would go into church, Joyce, and I would sit in the back and cry. Like, I was that person in the back row, and it was like a faucet. I would go in, I would sit down, the pastor would say, welcome. He'd do the blessing, and the tears would start, and they would pour down my face. And there was this little woman from India, and I won't name her, but she goes to my church. She's about 150 years old. She would come and sit with me. She always had a napkin in her pocket or a tissue in her pocket. You know how old people have a little tissue?
Yes.
She would give that to me. She put that in my hand, and then she would take my other hand and she would just hold it. And we didn't know each other. She really didn't speak English. And, I hug her every time I see her, but she's not really English speaking. So there's not a whole lot of, conversation to be had. But she would just sit with me.
And
I
beautiful.
know I'm pathetic, like what a mess. But, I have to tell everybody this, because whether you're a mess in home or a mess in public, or you break down at the PTO meeting, which I've seen, that's just normal. Like, that's normal post-divorce. That's normal when your mom dies. And we live in a society that's so sanitized that I think that makes it even worse when you're going through something really emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. And just allow yourself to feel the pain is a big thing. So many times we try to put on this facade, and we really need to feel the pain.
You got to
no matter where it is.
Judy Brizantine wrote this great book on grief, and I had her on one of my shows, and she actually drove up to talk with me and the kids, and she gave my kids a journal, and she told me, you have to sit with your grief if it's gonna pass, and you got to sit with your sadness or sit with your anger, because you can't sustain it more than, like, anger especially, it's hard to sustain more than a couple minutes. It passes. And sadness has to come out, like there's tears for a reason. There's all those emotions have to come out of us in order for us to heal. And if we don't let them come out, we don't sit with them, like, okay, sadness, I'm going to sit with you for a while. Okay, anger, I'm going to sit with you for a while. Or let's go for a walk, my angry feelings. Let's walk together. If we don't do that, Joyce, we can't heal. Ever. Yeah.
When you're sitting with those angers and grief, and are you doing anything? Are you writing? Are you walking? Certainly walking would be a good way with both
it depends. Sometimes I feel like writing. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I feel like walking. Sometimes I don't. Like, I think it's important to sit down and go, I am really mad right now. What am I mad about? Okay, what do I want to do with this anger? Because sometimes you can take that anger and you can clean your house top to bottom. You can go to the gym class. Like the other night I was doing this thing called slam ball, where you take this 10-pound heavy ball and you slam it on the ground. Try to pick it up. And I'm like, okay, like this is a good one. And I think you got to give yourself, like, I used to have this checklist. Like, there was 15 things I could do when I was sad. Take a bath, watch a funny movie, read a good book, listening to an inspiration, go to a class. I had a whole list, and I would sit down like it was a McDonald's menu and go, this is what I'm feeling, and these are my choices, so what am I going to do? Because journaling doesn't work all the time. Working out doesn't work all the time. Nothing works all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and variety is another way of helping it pass easier.
Yes.
So you listed best practices of post-divorce. Would that be one of them?
Yeah, have your checklist, like have just a piece of paper, you know, with a variety of things you can do to, you know, and I borrow this from Tony Robbins, to shift your state. I'm in this state of mind. I'm depressed. I'm sad. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. How do I move myself out of that? It's very hard to move yourself out of that sitting still on the couch. So you get up, get a cup of tea, sit outside and write in your journal. Walk into the other room and stand up while watching a Joel Osteen or a Wayne Dyer, or take your headphones. Like I have my happy tape, like the Go-Go's, they're like an 80s rock band, and they have like Head Over Heels and Vacation. They have songs that are impossible to be sad to. So I made my impossible to be sad list. And then this is funny. I burned a CD one time because everybody thought I was dying because I sent it to all my friends. I mixed this CD that had all these songs that made me cry. And sometimes I would get so frustrated because I wanted to cry, Joyce, and I couldn't let that emotion out. So I would put on my I'm Sad CD, and I had sent it to a couple of friends along with my happy CD. Like, this is my happy mixtape. This is my sad mixtape. My friend Beverly called from New Mexico. She goes, "Are you dying?" I kind of was, but not in the way she thought. But I made all these things that made me happy. Yes.
Yeah. What is that song now that just instantly makes me happy? Is it the Happy? I'm Happy?
Yeah. Pharrell Williams.
Yes.
You know, 'cause you gotta be happy, you know, but whatever song works for you. There's an Elvis song that, you know, he sings about not coming home for Christmas. And, you know, that'll unglue me in a New York minute. So knowing, and this is about, like, this is why I think divorce can really be great for you building your own self. If you take the time to learn about yourself, learn about what you need to be stronger than ever, sexier than ever, more successful than ever. Like I looked at it at a point, Joyce, as a do-over. You know, I get a do-over. I get to pick another husband if I want that. I get to pick out new furniture if I want. And I didn't do that right away. Some people slam it in the can right away. That wasn't me. It took me I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it 8 years later. I'll see stuff and go, you know, I really need to get rid of that. That reminds me of things, and I'll swap it with friends or give it away or, you know, it's a process, and it's a long process, especially if you were married a long time and very vested in your marriage.
Right. So let's see, it's 8 years after your divorce, but so how does the first year look like in comparison now to your life? I'm sure there are times you still have moments of tenderness or sadness, because I do, and it's like 17 years. Yeah. But those are to be expected. I mean, you'll never get over. That was a traumatic experience for any person to have to go through. So I think we would be kidding ourselves if we just thought we'd never think of it. We never have emotion about it. So how do you compare your life today?
Well, I am so grateful every day, Joyce, because I've been able to rebuild a life into a place where I am really happy. And I wasn't happy in my marriage for a really long time. And so what has changed for me is when I look back and I go, wow, look where you were and look where you are. Like when you have a baby, like the first day the baby comes home, you're like, oh crap, I hope I don't kill it. And then like by 2 years old, the kid's 5 years old, they're 13 years old, you're like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. That's kind of how I feel. I'm like, I'm pretty good at this. But I'll tell you, I went out to dinner with a longtime love of my life and friend who came in from out of town. And he came in and the kids were happy to see him. And we went to the local restaurant and there were 2 parents in the front seat and 2 kids in the back seat. And we ordered the family dinner. And we sat there as a family, and I started to cry a little bit. And he's like, what's going on? And I said, you know, there's no perfect families, but there are perfect moments. And I got to see what it was like to have 2 parents who loved each other, kids who loved each other. And even though they fought and squabbled and kicked each other under the booth, it was what I thought was a normal family. And it was just it was the greatest gift to me. And I looked around the restaurant and saw so many other intact families. And I thought, you will never get the joy out of this one meal that I will, because I felt like a whole family for just a couple hours.
Sweet.
Yeah. And everybody else in that restaurant, I'm sure, never even thought about that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that whole experience, most of us will agree, adds to our lives.
Yes.
It's once we move through the sadness, we feel that, pardon my phone, I'm sure you can hear it. But would I go back to that situation? No. Would I go back to the pain? No. Would I change some things? Some days, yeah, some days. But I agree with you. The growth that I've experienced, the allowing of me to be seen again. I mean, I would have never been doing a radio show if I'd been stayed in that relationship.
Right? I mean, so many doors open.
Yes. Yeah.
If you allow it.
That's true. That's true. Some people let that story be their only story.
That's right.
And so their life is more difficult, sadder. But you have given us some great information about recovery, about reinventing ourselves, allowing the pain to come and feeling the pain and expressing the pain through, what was the sport you did?
Oh, Krav Maga, Israeli, fighting. Who would think, this little Catholic girl from Buffalo, going, I'm going to take Israeli martial arts. And it's the funniest thing in the world, Joyce, but it was so good for me.
Yeah. Well, Sandra, I thank you so much for being with us today, sharing with my listening audience this transition. So if maybe they've never experienced, they understand some of the pain, they can help friends as they go forward. Or we can just know we're normal when we feel the sadness of divorce. So.
And Joyce, if you and I can do it, they can do it. So don't give up, and don't give up on yourself, and just get up every day and do your best. Do that sensei woo. Just do what you need to do today, and that's enough.
That's it. Well, I thank you very much for being with us today. I know that you walk away with some valuable information to put into your life or to share with a friend.
Thank you for listening. On behalf of Sandra Beck, we want you to get out there today to make more money with less time and effort so you can live the life you want. Tune in next week for more tips, tricks, and techniques from Coach Talk Radio.